or we've been walking through it, to see and to look at what wisdom is according to the Bible, and how we can all be wiser people in all facets of our life, in our relationships and our friendships and in our work. We'll look at in a couple weeks. And today we get to a topic which is can be a little sensitive to some folks, and it's the topic that actually the Book of Proverbs talks about as much, if not more, than any other topic. And what I did was I grouped the Proverbs that talked about this one topic all together, because, as I've been saying, the Book of Proverbs is a bit scattered. As you go through it, you'll have one proverb which is about your relationship to your mother or father. The next proverb will be about the relationship to your money, and on and on and on. It's not really organized by topic, so therefore I've had to organize these by topic. And this morning, the topic that we're looking at is the issue of self-control or discipline. And the Book of Proverbs, what it is essentially, it's a lot of it is a father and a mother talking to their child and saying, listen, if you want a content life, you're going to have to exercise discipline and control in the face of no self-control, and in the face of temptation, and in the face of no discipline. You're going to have to continually toe the line. You're going to have to do this. It's going to be hard, and it's going to be an effort. And these parents keep saying to their son over and over again. And as you saw, the word discipline keeps coming in and in and in. And they keep saying, listen, wisdom is the ability to show self-control in all aspects of your life. Now here's the thing. I had Charmaine read Proverbs 23, and by the way, in your bulletin on the inside are all the Proverbs that we read, so you can follow along with them. I had her read Proverbs 23 because when the topic of self-control comes up, it's extremely easy, and we do this all the time in the church, to write it off as saying, well, self-control is issues with eating or drinking. And it says it in there, and indeed, Proverbs is talking about people who are getting drunk, about people who are eating too much and gluttonous. And it says the slumber will take them. They'll basically be drowsy and sleepy. You know that feeling after like a big holiday meal. You get food coma. And Proverbs predicted food coma a long time before we did. Proverbs says, listen, that's going to be a problem. But in the church, it's way too easy to just write it off and say, listen, well, that doesn't apply to me. I don't get drunk. I don't eat too much food. Check box. Go home early. No, the Book of Proverbs actually talks about the lack of control in all aspects of our life. It talks about all vices like anger. There's people who have a lack of control with their anger. They can't stop getting angry. There's people who have a lack of control with their tongue that Proverbs talks about. They can't stop talking, and they can't stop talking about other people. There's people who have a lack of control when it comes to lying. They're continually covering up because they can't stop. It's always out of. The Book of Proverbs says we're all out of control. And what it takes is discipline to rein us back in. There's issues with lack of control with work. People who can't control their calendar and it gets out of hand. There's people who can't control their mind. They can't hold on to one thought for a time. They can't follow through. And Book of Proverbs today says, listen, whatever it is that you're struggling with in terms of maintaining discipline, there's an answer to it. And it comes with three metaphors, three illustrations that maybe you saw repeated in there. And if you look at your bulletin, you'll see them kind of come up again. And they're illustrations or they're metaphors that are a little difficult for us to grasp because we're modern folks. And here's the three. It's a house, it's a wall, and it's a tower. It's a house and a wall and a tower. And if we want to learn, it uses these metaphors for a specific purpose. It says, listen, if you want to know about discipline, you have to know about the house, you have to know about the wall, and you have to know about the tower. And I've labeled them this way. There's a wise house, there's a broken wall, and there's a strong tower. So let's look at this real quick. And these metaphors may be missed on us, so I'll try to break it down in terms of what it would have meant for the people who read this text or who lived out these proverbs in the time that they did. But first, let's start with the wise house. If you look back at 23:8, it says, by wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. And that word established means something like a strong, deep foundation that goes way down into the earth. It says, listen, wisdom, if you're wise and if you're disciplined and if you're self-controlled, you will be like a house that has foundations that go way deep down. Nothing can really shake you. You'll be pretty much unshakable. And it carries it even further, and it says, wisdom has built her house in chapter 9, verse 1, and she set up her 7 pillars. Now here, modern people, we don't really put a lot of stock in numbers. Maybe Friday the 13th is an unlucky, or 13 is not. Every culture's got unlucky numbers. This is a very good number. 7 in the Bible represented the number of completion, of perfection. So you see what the writer is saying here. He's saying, listen, wisdom, wise people are like a house that doesn't shake, and wise people have pillars set up in their lives that are perfectly founded. And if you think back to anybody you know who's wise, think right now. Think of somebody you consider to be wise. And this will be true, right? They are a firm house. They do have foundations that go deep down. They are relatively unshakable. When they give you counsel, you'll know that their pillars are set up perfectly around. And Book of Proverbs says, if you're wise, you'll be this way. You'll be disciplined. Your foundations will go deep, and you will be unshakable. And here's the definition of self-control that I'm going to use today, and I'll repeat it quite frequently. Self-control, really, what we'll see, is choosing the important thing over the urgent thing. That's all really self-control and discipline is. It's the ability for you and me to, in the times of crisis or in the times of temptation, the times of need, to choose the important thing over the urgent thing. And let me give a really silly, dumb example. Okay, I'm going to go really, this is silly, bear with me. Okay, I go to the gym every day, believe it or not. I go to the gym, and some of you are laughing now, that's not the joke. Wait for it, it'll come. I do go to the gym every day, or every day during the week. Now listen, the way that the gym is structured at my house, the gym is, in between the gym and my house on the way home, is a conveniently located Burger King. There's the joke. Now, okay, my comedic timing was off. Now listen, here's self-control. Here's what it is. Because when I come home from the gym, I'm tired and I'm hungry. And the last thing I want to do is cook a meal or make a salad. You know, the last thing I want to do is that. But that's the important thing, right? I know that that's the important thing for my body, but the urgent thing is that big blue, what color is it? Orange and red, and it's got all the bright colors. That's the urgent thing that I want to go for, and it's conveniently located right between the gym and my home. Now I know, silly example, but here's the point. Self-control, that's all it is being able to choose the important thing over the urgent thing. That's a wise house, but we know that we don't operate that way a lot. And the book of Proverbs defines the lack of self-control with another metaphor. See, if you have a wise house, the foundations go deep. But it says here, if you look at 23:8, it says, a man without self-control, and women too, is like a city broken into and left without walls. Now this metaphor doesn't really mean a whole lot to you and me, because we don't live in a city with a wall. Well, actually we do, technically. It had a wall, and you can go see it. But see, in ancient times, the wall signified this. If you were a city without walls, it meant that you were open to all the chaos and all the other invading armies. They could come right in and take anything they wanted from you. It comes in the book of Nehemiah in the Old Testament. You'll find this. He laments for Jerusalem because it doesn't have a wall. It's unsafe. It's open to chaos. It's open to anxiety. It's worrisome. And it says, listen, a man without self-control, a man who chooses the urgent things over the important things, is a broken wall. It means that if you don't exercise discipline, if you have no control, if you choose the urgent things over the important things, you'll always be living life without walls, without protection. And what's interesting about chapter 18, verse 11 in Proverbs, it says that a rich man's wealth is his strong city. And like a high wall, again, is his imagination. And you know what that's saying? It's saying we all have walls. For the rich man, it says his wealth in his imagination is his high wall. But we all have walls. Walls that we think will protect us from the chaos outside. Things that we put up, walls of public opinion, walls of looking perfect on the outside, walls of covering up our brokenness. We build walls all the time. And Proverbs says, listen, if you don't build your wall on God and in the right way, it will always be broken. And if you carry the metaphor even further, and there's an example of this in the Old Testament book of Daniel, a broken wall doesn't have to be totally broken for an invading army to get in. It can have just even a little crack. And even that little crack will be enough. It'll be enough for the chaos to seep in. It'll be enough for the anxiety, the worry. We all have broken walls in our lives. And we all want to be the wise house with the 7 pillars perfectly set up and the foundation firm and deep. And if the walls that we build are anything but the gospel and anything but what God offers us, it will always be broken. And discipline will always elude us. So how do we get, what is the answer then, Proverbs says? If there's a wise house and we want to have foundations deep, and I'm mixing metaphors on purpose, yes, and our walls are broken in the city, and we choose the urgent things over the important things, what's the answer? Because if I left you today and I just said, choose the important things over the urgent things, let's pray and go, you would surely walk out the door, and in 10 minutes, that big Burger King sign will lure you back in because it'll say, come here, this is the urgent thing. Don't worry about the important thing. No. Proverbs says it's not an issue of will. It's an issue of direction. If you look at 18:10, it says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. Here's our third metaphor. We had a house, we had a wall, we have now a tower. And it says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man, what? Runs into it. Direction, not will. It says, in order to practice discipline, in order to be a disciplined person, a person of balance and control and wisdom in your life, it's not a matter of your will. You're going to fall again and again and again. And whatever broken wall you have will always be broken. But it gives it this other metaphor to say a strong tower, run to it. And in ancient times, again, we don't have towers that we run to, but in ancient times, if you were out in the countryside and you were outside the wall and the enemy was coming, you ran to the tower that was in the middle of the city. You didn't hesitate. You didn't wait. You didn't say, I see the tower, I'll wait for it. Someday I'll get there. You said, no, pack it up, let's go. See, it says the name of the Lord is this tower, and you and I can run to it. And let me push this illustration out. Running into the name of the Lord is an interesting expression, and I have no earthly clue what it means. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't know what that means. What does it mean to run into the name of the Lord? And here's what I'll suggest what I think it means. The name of the Lord in the Bible meant his character. And I think that the writer of Proverbs is using this illustration so that you and I are a little confused. What does it mean in times of temptation and in times of no self-control to run into the tower in the name of the Lord? What does that even mean? I'm going to give 2 suggestions this morning. And it's 2 that has helped me, and it's 2 that I heard. I'm going to reword them a little bit. And the 2 are this. For me, and this could be different for you. Running into the name of the Lord is going to be different for everybody. But here's at least, let me posit and throw out 2 ideas. First, to run into the name, to run into the strong tower, to run into him to get the discipline and self-control we need in our life requires, I think, 2 things. Well, first, remembering the truth, and secondly, experiencing a love. Remembering a truth and experiencing a love. And let me give the illustration first. Remembering the truth. If you know the story of Jesus on the boat, and it comes up in Luke chapter 8, and Jesus is on the boat with his disciples, and this mighty storm comes, and they're freaking out, and Jesus, save us, Jesus, what's going on? And he stands up and he asks them an interesting question. He says, where is your faith? And what he means by that is, where did your faith go? He doesn't say to them, you need more faith. And he doesn't say to them, just pray harder. And he doesn't say to them, just will it and the storm will go away. He looks at them and says, where did your faith go? If he could have finished the sentence, I'm sure he would have said, guys, don't you know that in chapter 7, I just healed somebody? You were there. You saw it. You know that I've been here all along. You know my character. You know what I can do. You know how powerful I am. Do you think a storm's going to take you away from me? Jesus says, where did your faith go? Remember the truth of who I am. To run into the name of the Lord, at least remember. It at least means to remember the truth. Remember God's character. Remember that he's not going to let you fall. Remember that he's got you even if you do fall. What storm? But there's a better example, not a better example, a different example. You can't get better than Jesus. Here's a different example. And I've said this, I've used this many times, and it's probably the only part of this entire book that I ever remember, sadly enough. And it comes in the book Jane Eyre. And if you remember the story of Jane and Rochester, they fall madly in love. But she finds out that Rochester's married. And Rochester, there's a scene where they're going back and forth, and Rochester's trying to convince her that she can be a mistress, and she can live in a house near them, and they'll keep it kind of secret. And she's going back and forth, and she's saying, no. But he's saying, don't you love me? And she says, yes, I do love you. But this isn't right. I can't do this. She's in the face of ultimate temptation, and she's about to lose control. She even says, I was experiencing an ordeal. A hand of fiery iron grasped my vitals. Terrible moment, full of struggle, blackness, burning. Not a human being that ever lived could wish to be loved better than I was loved, and him who thus loved me I absolutely worshipped, and I must renounce love and idol. One drear word compromised my intolerable duty: depart. You see this war that she has inside going on? Rochester says, look, you don't even have any family. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to be ashamed. Just do it. We're in love, aren't we? And he had a marriage that he wasn't in love, and he wanted to be with Jane Eyre, and she was deeply in love with him. The face of the storm. She says, it burns. But here's what she does. She remembers the truth. And she goes on to say, after they go back and forth more and more, she says this, still indomitable was the reply, I care for myself. The more solitary, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will keep the law given by God, sanctioned by man. She says, I will hold to the principles received by me when I was sane and not mad as I am now. Laws and principles are not for the times when there is no temptation. They are for such moments as this, when body and soul rise in mutiny against their rigor. Stringent are they, inviolate they shall be. If at my individual convenience I might break them, what would be their worth? They have a worth, so I have always believed. And if I cannot believe it now, it is because I am insane, quite insane. With my veins running fire, and my heart is beating faster than I can count its throbs. Perceived opinions, foregone determinations are all I have at this hour to stand by. There I plant my foot. This was a woman who looked at the man that she loved, and it was easy to do what he wanted her to do, and it was easy to go off. And she says, there, I plant my foot. She says, laws were not given for a time when no temptation. They were given for a time just as this. She remembers the truth, and it saves her. Now, if I left you there, sometimes you have to remember the truth. When we go through issues of temptation, we're going to have to remember the truth and go back and tell ourselves who God is and how good he is and what he's doing for us. And we're going to have to play that mental exercise, and we're going to have to plant the foot. And that'll work sometimes, but it won't work all the time. Because if you want to show discipline in your life, you'll need the second thing, not only to remember the truth, but to experience the love, a love. Let me give an illustration of what I mean by this and how love will help you with self-control. In the book of Genesis, chapter 29, 30 and 31, I believe, too, there's one of the more beautiful love stories in all of the Bible, and it's Jacob and Rachel. And if you don't know this story, Jacob falls in love with Rachel. And Jacob goes to Rachel's father and says, listen, I want to marry Rachel. What do I have to do? And the father looks at him and says, okay, you can have Rachel if you work for me for 7 years. 7 years? He says, yeah, you can have her. If you love her, you can have her, but you have to wait 7 years. You have to work, very manual labor for 7 years. And you know what's beautiful? In Genesis 29:20, it says, "So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her." Do you see what Jacob's love for Rachel made the urgent thing? You know how many times in 7 years Jacob probably says, "This isn't worth it. I want to get out of here. Why am I doing this?" But he has discipline. He has control. He has a wise house. He has foundations. Why? It's just because his love for her made 7 years seem but few days. Now that's a good story. That's a great love story. But there's a greater one. If you go to the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus is praying at night, his disciples are asleep over there. And he knows that the people are going to come and arrest him in a couple minutes. And it's dark, and nobody's out, and nobody's watching him. And he knows that when those people come and arrest him, they're going to take him away and give him an unfair trial. And they're going to put him on a cross, and they're going to kill him. And he's going to lose the love that he had with his Father for all eternity. He knows that. And he stays. Why? What would possess him? What prize could Jesus have gotten by staying? What prize, what love would he have to stay that disciplined? That love this morning, folks, is you, and you, and you. In the face of temptation, Jesus planted his foot, and he did it for you. He had every chance to escape. He had every chance, like Jane Eyre, just to give in. And he says, "There I plant my foot." Why? Jacob loved Rachel, and he was willing to work 7 years for her. Jesus loved you so much that he was willing to infinitely die for you, to go to the ends of the cosmic earth, to lose everything for you. You're the prize. You're the important thing that Jesus chose, rather than the urgent thing. If that reality starts to hit you, that what he did for you was so great, 7 years, he gave it all up for you. You were his important thing over the urgent things. And therefore, you and I, if we focus on that love, you and I will be so transformed by that love that we will start to put the important things over the urgent things in our lives. There's a part that I love in the movie Saving Private Ryan. There's a lot of parts I love about that movie. But you know, the end always gets me. I can hardly even watch it. I start crying all the time. I'm going to probably cry now if I talk about it. You remember that Tom Hanks' character? Yeah, you guys know the plot. He's about to blow the bridge, right? To save Private Ryan, to save Matt Damon's character. He's about to do this. He's about to give up his life so that he could have this Private Ryan go on to live a good life. And you know, it's all the chaos and the noise, and he leans forward, and remember Tom Hanks' character whispers something to him. And he says, "Earn this." And you fast forward, of course, and you're at the tomb in Arlington. And Matt Damon's character's old now, and he's the grandfather, and he's got his family behind him, and he's got his wife with him, and he's looking at the tomb. And finally, we see that he's looking at the tomb of Tom Hanks' character, and he looks at his wife, and essentially he says, "Did I earn this?" And we're here today to say, you don't earn this. But does what Jesus did for you, if you were to look at his tomb, make you say, "I want to choose him as the important thing over the urgent things"? Matt Damon's character looked at his wife and said he was so moved by the sacrifice of this man that he couldn't help but want to live in a wise house, in a controlled life. He wanted a family. He wanted all of that. He couldn't help but want to be that for this person who gave his life for him. And today, if you and I if we are able to look at the tomb of Jesus and to see him resurrected for you, and to see him that in your broken walls, he comes in and you can run to him as a strong tower in times of need. You can run to him. Why? Because he gave everything up for you. You were his prize. As I close, the interesting thing about Jesus' death, if you look at all the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they all share one thing. In telling about Jesus' death, they all say one fact, that he was led out of the city. That when he was killed, they walked him out of the city. And you know why? Because the city was the place of power and security and control, and he was being thrown out of it. He was being thrown out of the arms of his heavenly Father, so that in times of crisis, you and I know we can run to the tower in the city. He was cast out so that we could be brought in. He was destroyed so that our broken walls can be mended. We can run to the tower, whatever metaphor you want. That's self-control. That's discipline. Make him your Rachel. He already made you his. So take some time in silent prayer now. Reflect on this. And if this is not a truth for you, and it never has been, and you never believe that Jesus actually did it for you, maybe today you can believe it for the first time, that he ushers you back into his name. Because Jesus gets cast out of the city for you. Go to him in prayer.